I can't believe I'm saying this, but I wish we could play Liverpool and Arsenal and Man City every single week. Hello, everybody, and welcome out to the Newcastle United Digest, the channel delivering you tune content in bite-sized chunks. My name is Adam Snyder, and this episode will be all about the 4-2 loss at Brentford on Saturday. I will be giving you my honest reaction to the key moments in the game, and I'm going to break them up based on the half that they happened. I will give you my ratings by position, and I'm also including a new category this week that I'll be using going forward. But before we get started, make sure you are subscribed to the channel and hit the notification bell to be alerted to future episode releases. And if you really like what you see, share it with your friends in your group chats or wherever else you talk about Newcastle United. Now let's talk about this first half. This is the fun half, for us at least. This is where we started to see a lot of great things happen that carried over from the Liverpool game on Wednesday. And we also started to see a little bit of what we didn't like to see against teams around us or below us in the table. You saw some great press action. You saw some great opportunities that were created by the forwards, good alert play in midfield, and some solid defending and some great goalkeeping by Nick Pope. These are all the things that you wanted, but you also started to see some of the breakdowns that we saw against Liverpool, we saw against Crystal Palace, we saw against West Ham, and they continued to rear their ugly head in this game. And Brentford very quickly picked up where Liverpool left off on Wednesday, and that is pick on Lewis Hall. I can't believe I'm saying this after the run of form that he had going into this last international break and how well he played for England, but he has had two absolute shockers since the international break. And this goal happened in the 8th minute. Norgard finds Mbeumo 1-versus-1 against Hall on the right-hand side. Hall steps in way too quickly, and Mbeumo takes full advantage of it. He was able to walk across the top of the penalty area without anybody else challenging him, and Mbeumo made him pay 1-0 to Brentford very early on. On the plus side, we saw some of Newcastle's resilience also carry over from the Liverpool game, and Newcastle came right back at Brentford. In the 11th minute, Longstaff intercepted a throw-in, and that started the whole play. Longstaff was able to make an intercepting header to Isak, who found Bruno in the middle, and then he got it out to the right-hand side to Jacob Murphy. Isak kind of trotted into the middle of the penalty area, and Murphy had him and Longstaff wide open, either in the middle of the 6-yard box or Longstaff on the far post. And Jacob Murphy elected to go with Isak. Although I'm not sure if that was supposed to be a scuffed left-footed shot or if it was meant to be a cross, but either way, Isak wasn't going to take any chances, and he was able to get a diving header on it and buried it and made it 1-1. I'm not sure if Jacob Murphy will admit that it was a shot attempt. I'm sure he'll just admit it was a millimeter perfect cross that found Isak's head. Regardless how you see it, it was the perfect ball for the perfect time, and Isak was able to take full advantage of it. Not long after that, Alexander Isak was able to create a wonderful scoring chance, and then he couldn't finish it off. Isak stripped Beast defender Collins on the far side, and then he just struts into the penalty area, takes a few touches, was able to beat the keeper, and then takes 2 touches and doesn't realize that the keeper was able to make a recovery swat at the ball before getting a shot off. If he would have just taken one less touch or taken one touch a little bit further over to the far post, he would have had a lot more space to just tap the ball in or take one less touch and tap it in. Either one, you got to tap it in. And it would have been 2-1, but instead it remained 1-1 for a little while. And from one mistake to another, we go to the 28th minute where Barnes just passing the ball right into the middle of nobody, finds Wissa right in the defensive third, who was able to dribble the ball 10 yards without being touched, and then he produces a fantastic finish. And unlike Isak, he was able to take full advantage of a mistake and put Brentford up 2-1. And then not long after that, Harvey Barnes is able to make up for his stupid giveaway at the other end of the pitch. Murphy attempted a cross, it was blocked, then he retrieves the block ball, and then makes a run toward the end line, and then finds Barnes sitting with, I don't know, a buffer of like 3 or 4 yards all ways around him. And the ball was cut back. Barnes was able to take 2 touches before getting a shot off, and the shot was just a perfect stroke, far post, and it made it 2-2 again. You would think that at the end of the half, you'd be a little bit happy about the fact that we're resilient and we're scoring goals and we're playing well, mostly, and that we could continue those first half vibes into the second half and maybe beat them at their own game and just run and gun at them. But that didn't happen. And it all came undone with a long kick taken by Brentford keeper Mark Flecken. Flecken takes a free kick from about 10 yards inside the Brentford half, goes over everybody's head, and takes a bounce. And Collins is able to easily retrieve it because he was the only one that was behind Newcastle's line, and he was able to slot the ball home without any resistance whatsoever. Someone that I was watching this game with described it as a high school goal. And I'm sure every single other high school and college coach watching this game were collectively just face palming and groaning and wondering how on earth this could happen. When I played in high school, I vividly remember drilling these exact situations on set pieces, whether it was corner kicks or free kicks. If the ball bounced without anybody getting it touched, everybody was running. And if it happened in a game, we're running even more. And if this is a goal that my team conceded, I know I'd be running a lot the next day in practice. This is a little uncharacteristic of Eddie Howe making subs so early in the half, but he definitely saw something that was necessary and wanted to make some adjustments. The first sub was bringing on Anthony Gordon for Jacob Murphy. Despite the fact that Jacob Murphy had 2 assists, he also missed some opportunities in the first half, and they were some pretty wide open ones as well. And the other sub in this stoppage of play was Joe Linton came off for Sandro Tonali. I don't know what it is, but Joe Linton has not looked like himself since the international break. And I'm not sure if he's because he's carrying an injury or if he's trying not to get suspended because he's on 4 yellow cards or a combination of both. But it's the third or fourth game in a row where he's looked very anonymous or has been at fault for a goal. I'm really worried about him because I like to see the old Big Joe back where he's the enforcer. He's bossing people, making passes, and he's getting involved at both ends of the pitch as well as just bossing in midfield. I don't see that at all. And I haven't seen that at all recently. One thing I noticed between this round of subs and the next round of subs is we really didn't have a whole lot going on. When you're just coming on like that, if you score a worldie like that, just coming on the pitch, it's amazing. And if you miss those, it's kind of okay because you're kind of getting calibrated, getting into the flow of the game. But unfortunately, that was the only real opportunity that we had in between these stoppages of play where we made subs. And the second round of subs made things look a little bit more murky and more confusing. The first sub was Sean Longstaff coming off for Callum Wilson. On paper, you go, huh? That's not a like for like sub. What's going on here? Then when you think about it for another second, you're like, oh, okay. Eddie wants to go to a 4-4-2 and put Isak and Wilson up front. That makes sense. What doesn't make sense is taking off Harvey Barnes for Miguel Almiron. Miggy hasn't played a whole lot this season. And every time that he's been on the pitch, it shows that he's just not right for this team anymore. It just didn't work. It doesn't fit. Any attempt to either keep whatever momentum you thought you had after the first round of subs or try to regain momentum with these subs did not work at all. In fact, it made things a lot more confusing and it really slowed down this team a lot. The next sub is pretty straightforward. You have Hall come out and Trips come on. Hall has had a rough go this week, and I think it was time to give Hall a rest a little bit. So bringing Trips on kind of also showed the same thing with Miggy that, yeah, it was nice that we had these two on the pitch and producing and doing well when they were producing. But after this round of subs, it got a little bit murkier and a little bit more confusing. And, we didn't really have a whole lot of opportunities after this. Tonali had a header that went over the bar. You had Isak get a shot blocked and Miggy put one way wide. And it just showed, and in my mind, it solidified. I think it's time to move on from Miggy and Trips. As much as I hate to say that, because I've always enjoyed watching them play, something's up, and neither one of them look like they are the player that came to Newcastle United. In my mind, it looks like they are kind of shells of their former selves, and I think that they both need a change of scenery to revitalize themselves a little bit. And then just as injury time was about to start, Brentford was able to put the final nail in the coffin and put this game to bed. And it started with another errant touch in midfield that led to this Brentford break. Tonali did not do a very good job of receiving a pass, and it went right to Brentford, and they were able to march right in. Norgard gets the ball and finds Mbomo 25 to 30 yards away from goal. Cher attempts to play the ball, and he's on the wrong side of Mbomo. Mbomo does a fantastic job to bring the ball down. He does really well to find the substitute Shada, who was streaking into the box. The finish was an easy one, especially after Shada was coming off of a hat trick at midweek. How he was coming on as a sub in the 73rd minute is still beyond me, and it was really confusing the Brentford fans I watched this with on Saturday as well. Was it confusing? Yes. Did it still come to bite us in the butt? Also, yes. And now let's move on to my ratings by position and I'm adding a new category to the rankings this episode, and I'll be using it for all match reviews going forward. And we're going to start in the back like we always do with Nick Pope in goal. I'm going to give him a 6.5 out of 10. Pope was a more aggressive sweeper keeper in today's game, and it scares me whenever he does this because he is not Manuel Neuer, and he shouldn't even try to be Manuel Neuer. He had a couple of solid clearances that did work, but he also had the really scary one where he also got dispossessed 30 yards away from goal, and this happened because he was way too slow to get rid of the ball. Thankfully, Dan Burn was able to get back and make a goal line clearance, but you shouldn't have to rely on your defenders to save your butt when you're 30 yards out of goal. Get rid of the ball and get back. And speaking of Dan Burn, we're going to move to defense, and I'm going to give the entire unit a 5 out of 10 for this game. When you're giving away 4 goals, it's kind of hard to give you a high score. Dan Burn and Tino Livramento had solid games today, including that block I mentioned by Burn. The big problems lied in the play from Lewis Hall and especially Fabian Cher. In my match preview last week, I was worried that Dan Burn would be too aggressive in diffusing Brentford's attacks, but in fact, the culprit was Cher. He was too passive on Wiss's goal in the first half, and he was way too aggressive on Mbomo on Brentford's fourth. And he was also a big contributor on set pieces, and not in a good way. More on that a little bit later. Midfield, I'm going to give them a 6.5 out of 10. They played decently in the first half, but the entire second half, they felt flat. The forwards felt flat. The entire team just felt flat. And a lot of that rests on the midfield's play. In the first half, they did well in transition and keeping up the aggression, and they were lured to opportunities to make a play. And this was exemplified in Longstaff's throw-in interception that led to the second goal. It just didn't carry over to the second half, and we were just, flat. The forwards, they're going to get the same 6.5 out of 10 score for the exact same reasons. Because in the first half, you had a front three that was playing really well. They were pressing really well. They were gelling. They were clicking. They were playing amazing together. It was nice to see Harvey Barnes actually use some pace and beat somebody to the end line for once. That's something I haven't seen very much all season. And Jacob Murphy contributing 2 assists in this game. That's amazing. And both of the goals were really well worked. The second half, just like the midfield, felt like the energy and plan they had in mind was left in the dressing room. The subs also didn't help, and the team felt further disjointed as the subs were completed. Next, we have set pieces, and this is going to be a very small 2 out of 10. They never really offered a whole lot on the offensive side of the ball when it came to set pieces, and Cher's bad day at the office carried over into set piece defending as well, because he was the one that whiffed on the long ball that bounced to Collins for Brentford's third goal. And the new section, this one's going to fall on the coaching staff, and that will be substitutions. And in this game, I'm going to give Eddie Howe and his staff a 4 out of 10. The first round of subs were a very solid like-for-like switch, and they made a lot of sense. And bringing Trips on makes a lot of sense because Hall has not had the greatest past 2 games, and he needed a rest. However, the Wilson and Miggy subs were thoroughly confusing to me, and I think it somewhat confused the team. They looked further out of sync with this change, and the team were not able to produce any solid scoring chances that were really well and truly threatening opportunities. And if you add those up and you take an average out of them, it comes out to about a 5.1 out of 10. The first half elation made way for another disappointing finish against a team that we are trying to stay ahead of in the table. We can't always play the Man Cities and Arsenals and Liverpools and Spurs every week. And Eddie Howe has to figure out how to beat these mid-table sides that are pressing for European football. Dropping points like this will go a long way to deny us play in either Europa League or Conference League next season. And I hate to say it, and I've alluded to this in previous episodes, but if this slide continues and we get dumped out of both cups, I don't think Eddie Howe's going to be in the job for very much longer if that happens. And that will do it for this episode of the Newcastle United Digest. I hope that you've enjoyed watching this one. I've really been enjoying putting these videos together for all of you, and I hope that you've been enjoying watching them as well. And if you are enjoying them, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Be sure to give this a like and share it with a bunch of friends that you know, whether they're in your group chats or you talk with them one-on-one about Newcastle, or you have some good discussions on social media someplace, whether it's in a Facebook group or on Reddit or wherever else you talk about Newcastle United. Be sure to give us a share and give us a shout out. Anything that you do is greatly appreciated.